Where to start? I've only got 20 minutes for this monologue. Not since Caligula appointed his horse as a proconsul of Rome has there been a more grotesque appointment than that of Peter Mandelson as His Majesty's representative, envoy to the presidency of the United States of America, British ambassador. A man who was twice sacked from the British cabinet for corruption. A man who left his subsequent job in the European Union under a very dark cloud. A man who was so close to Jeffrey Epstein, the child sex trafficker, now suicided, that he stayed in his house after Epstein had been convicted of child sex charges. A man who went shopping for white belts and tried them on over his shirt. Who tries on a belt in a shop? Well, the new British ambassador does, asking Jeffrey Epstein, does my bum look big in this? Or something to that effect. He is on record, not once but many times, as describing Donald Trump as no more than a white nationalist, a white supremacist. He is a man who has slandered the president, who he's going to have to deal with on a daily basis as Britain's ambassador in Washington. He was described by the co-chair of Donald Trump's presidential election campaign team as a moron. Well, I've known him for more than 40 years. A moron he is not. He is a knuckle-dragger, to be sure, but he's a highly cunning and sly one. Otherwise, he would not have survived all this time. He clearly has something on Keir Starmer, who has, coincidentally or not, taken off for what his aides say is a desperately needed holiday because he is suffering from the stresses and strains of 6 months as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, during which time he has become less popular than any Prime Minister in Britain's long and inglorious history of disastrous Prime Ministers. He makes Liz Truss look like JFK by comparison. The Keir Starmer Prime Ministership will not be as long for this world as you perhaps thought. A little runt called Wes Streeting is already on manoeuvres. I'd like to say he had that lean and hungry look, but there's nothing lean or hungry about him. He's a fat toad, but he's got Keir Starmer in his sights. And he is the true believer of the Blairite Mandelsonite flame, blue in every regard. He is determined to be Prime Minister before the next general election. And so a Labour government resting on a record parliamentary majority, which looked impregnable on the 5th of July, now looks extremely rocky in its prospects. They are losing by-election results every single Thursday, and importantly, they're losing them not to the Conservatives, though they have lost some to them. They're losing them to Nigel Farage's British Nationalist Reform Party, which is the British equivalent of the German AfD, to which I now turn. Just 48 hours ago, yet another Christmas market in Germany suffered a terrorist attack which murdered 5 people, one of them a child, and maimed more than 80 of them when they were out celebrating Christmas at a Christmas market in Magdeburg in the eastern part of Germany. The atrocity was carried out by a Saudi asylum seeker. That led to a rejoicing of kind in the camp of the nationalists in Europe when they thought they could mark it up as yet another Muslim terrorist operation. Until it emerged, thanks to Twitter and nothing and nowhere and no one else, thanks to Twitter, and more importantly, thanks to the very clever people who are everywhere on Twitter to be found, whose technical ability, whose hard-working character, and whose, well, brilliance quickly revealed, within an hour, revealed that the killer was, in fact, the anti-Muslim. He was a hater of Muslims. He was in Germany because he hated Muslims, or that and the rape charges that were hanging over him back in Saudi Arabia. He, for years, has been spewing hate on social media against Islam, against Muslims, and against what he alleged was the European willing surrender to the Islamification of Europe. So he was not an Islamist, he was the anti-Islamist. He was a supporter of Israel. Geert Wilders of the Netherlands was his hero. It's not me making these two allegations, it's him, the mass murderer of Magdeburg. It's him that said over and over again on his social media that Wilders was his hero. Tommy Robinson, the little jackbooter in England presently in prison, was one of his followers on social media. It doesn't get much more embarrassing than that, Tommy, does it? Well, the reality is this individual may well have been inflating his hatred of Islam to get political asylum in Germany in the first place. But once he got it, you would have thought that it would have died down, but no, it stepped up. The truth is, this pro-Israel, pro-Wilders, pro-Tommy Robinson, little tosspot of a mass murderer is someone who was acting on somebody's behalf. Unless it's one of these lone wolf mental illness cases, you know, when it's not a Muslim, it's mental illness that is ascribed to the reasoning behind these kind of mass school shootings or terrorist atrocities like this. Either it was that, or he was involved in some complicated psyop indeed. I first imagined it was a plot by the deep state in Germany to scupper the possibility of a victory of the AfD. That's the German equivalent of Nigel Farage. But if that was the purpose, it would appear to have backfired, because the only thing that matters to many millions of people in Germany is that this mass murderer should never have been in their country in the first place. And all the other crimes that have been committed by people who should not have been in their country in the first place is being counted now in the weighing of the political balance, which as soon as February, not much more than a month away from now, will be going to the polls in the German general elections. Because the leader of the AfD has just moved into pole position, just moved into the lead. The single most popular German prime ministerial candidate is the candidate of the AfD. I'm a supporter of Sarah Wagenknecht. I hope that she does very well. I hope that she is in a position to be part of a decent coalition government in Germany. But she's not even in the top 5 right at this moment. She's very strong in the east of Germany, but across Germany as a whole, currently polling between 8 and 9%. She's going to have to do a lot better than that. The truth is that little soldier Schulz, who destroyed his country on behalf of the United States government of Joe Biden, to which I shall turn in a moment, is the biggest loser. He looks a Keir Starmer minus of a prime minister now. He's been in now for several years, and everything in Germany has gotten worse. The factories have stopped turning. The big employers have closed down. A company which supplies Mercedes-Benz, which was founded in 1792 and survived Napoleon, survived World War I, survived World War II, survived the stresses and strains of the Hitlerite period against them, for they were not unlike others, Nazis themselves, has just filed for bankruptcy, 1792 to 2024. The reality is Germany has committed economic suicide by following Joe Biden's orders to go to war with Russia. No country in all of Europe has been more gung-ho for war with Russia than little Schulz's Germany. And the foreign minister, Anna Baerbock, if you don't know why I call her that, Google it and see, have presided over the destruction, not just of the German economy, but looking at the mass turnouts of far-right demonstrations across Germany this evening, may well have precipitated the fall of this German republic. A German nationalist party may now come to power. It is, of course, likely that they will withdraw from the war in Ukraine, and I'll be very happy about that. But it will also redouble the German support for Netanyahu's genocide against the Palestinian people. It will also preside over a wave of xenophobia and mass deportations of people who were invited to come to Germany in the first place. It will not be a very pleasant Germany. The future tomorrow may belong to the AfD, but that portends a potential nightmare for the rest of us. Economic collapse, the election of a German nationalist government steeped in revanchism. What could possibly go wrong? Speaking of the American empire, the Wall Street Journal has revealed all week the horrors of the Joe Biden presidency, which all these European governments followed over the cliff to their own destruction. Joe Biden did not go senile that night that George Clooney realized that all was not well. Joe Biden, according to the Wall Street Journal, was senile before he even entered the White House. And the election that I am in no doubt was rigged for him might well have led to the election of a presidency for a second term of a Joe Biden who'd been senile for the previous 4 years. That would have meant that the United States and the countries that follow it, wherever it wants to go, would have been in the hands of a man who couldn't scratch his arse because he didn't know where his arse was. And I could take that metaphor further, but good taste and the Christmas spirit precludes it. But that's how serious the situation was. A man who couldn't bite his nails, a man who couldn't find his way to the lavatory in the Vatican in time, a man who did not know where he was, what day of the week it was, whether his wife was his sister, his wife, and all the other madness that we have watched on social media over this last 4 years. The Joe Biden malaise, a curse on the Democratic Party, I hope. And I hope that the rigging of the election in 2020 will be one of the first orders on the agenda of the incoming Trump administration. Heads must roll for this. Heads must roll for lying to the American people and the people of the world that Joe Biden was as sharp as a tack when he was, in fact, not even with us. The elderly relative dribbling that we keep up in the attic and bring him down only when it is inescapable to do so. That president is the one who took America deeper and deeper into what might yet become World War III. That president is the one who pushed the European governments to obey his orders, even at the cost of their own economies, even at the cost of their own societies. There's so much going on. I can only now turn to the Ukraine. In the Ukraine, terrorism is now the last weapon that they have left. All the NATO weapons, all the hundreds of billions of NATO taxpayers' dollars, euros, and pounds have come down to firing drones at residential tower blocks in Kazan. That one hurt me more than others have, because just a few weeks ago, I and much of the world, most of the world's representatives, were present in that very city of Kazan. President Putin had just praised the city, and rightly so, as one of the great cities of the world, a completely divine and inspired place where Muslims and Christians live 50-50 with each other in perfect harmony. A beautiful, rising city was struck several times in terrorist attacks which looked for all the world like 9/11. The drone looked like one of these aircraft that smashed into the Twin Towers. It achieved nothing except killing the ordinary Russian citizens that were living in the house that the drone hit. It wasn't intended to achieve anything. It's the last throw of a criminal regime in Kiev, pumped up with the money, weapons, and diplomatic and media propaganda cover of the same Western countries that have taken their own countries into perdition in the service of little Zelensky and crazy Joe Biden. The front is collapsing. More soldiers are surrendering than at any time in the conflict. More territory is being conquered by the Russian armed forces than at any time in the conflict. Soon there will be nothing left to negotiate about. Soon Russia will take all of Ukraine, and they sure ain't going to negotiate with Zelensky in any circumstances. He has no legitimacy. His presidential term has run out. Someone in Kiev will have to create a new dispensation in their capital if they want Russia to sit down with them and to agree an end to this disastrous war, which has killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people and led to the wiping off the map of the entire east of Ukraine. Someone is going to have to sit down and negotiate with Russia an end to this war based on Russia's demands that could have been acceded to, were acceded to in the Minsk agreements, guaranteed by Germany and by France, and later by the United Nations Security Council itself. If such an agreement is not reached, I fully expect that the Russians will go all the way to Kiev, and they will appoint a government there acceptable to them. So NATO has failed in the Ukraine. Question is, where is it going to try next? We'll be deep diving into that with two of the best guests around in the next 1 hour and 40 minutes. You've come to the right place. It's the mother of all talk shows.